Some companies don't fall because of recessions. They don't fall because of bad products or failing markets. They fall because the rot starts at the very top, and by the time the world notices, the damage is already done. Today's story is about one of the most spectacular corporate collapses in modern history, a business empire that had everything: money, power, prestige, and the respect of an entire nation, and still managed to destroy itself from the inside out. This is the story of Enron, the rise of an American giant in 1985. Kenneth Lay merged two natural gas pipeline companies, Houston Natural Gas and Internorth, to form what would eventually become one of the most powerful corporations in the United States. The company was renamed Enron, and it quickly grew into something far bigger than a simple energy business. By the mid-1990s, Enron had reinvented itself. It shifted from moving gas through pipelines to trading energy contracts like a financial powerhouse. The company's transformation came largely through the influence of Jeffrey Skilling, a sharp and aggressive executive who joined as a consultant in the late 1980s and climbed through the ranks with stunning speed. Skilling pushed the company to adopt a style of accounting called mark-to-market, where projected future profits from deals were counted as current earnings, long before that money was actually earned. On paper, this made Enron look extraordinarily profitable. In reality, it was laying the groundwork for a catastrophic deception. The corporate culture Skilling built was intensely competitive. He recruited top business school graduates and created an environment where performance, or the appearance of performance, was everything. Executives were rewarded for closing deals fast and generating numbers that impressed Wall Street. No one was encouraged to ask too many questions. By the year 2000, Enron was the seventh largest company in the United States by revenue, reporting over $100 billion in annual earnings. Fortune magazine named it the most innovative large company in America for 6 years in a row. Its stock traded at nearly $90 per share. Analysts loved it. Investors trusted it. Politicians praised it. Kenneth Lay was seen as a visionary, and Jeffrey Skilling was the hard-driving genius who made it all happen. To outsiders, Enron was the blueprint for the modern American corporation. No one outside its walls could see what was quietly building within them. The fraud hidden behind the numbers. The deeper problem was that much of Enron's reported success was fiction. Chief Financial Officer Andrew Fastow, one of Skilling's most celebrated recruits, had constructed an elaborate web of shell companies and off-the-books partnerships. These structures were designed to hide billions of dollars in debt that Enron had accumulated from failed business ventures. By routing losses through these separate entities, Enron's public financial statements looked healthy while the actual balance sheet was quietly collapsing. Fastow himself personally profited from these arrangements, earning millions of dollars in management fees from the partnerships he controlled. Partnerships that technically existed to serve Enron, but were used to enrich the people managing them. The board of directors, whose job was to provide oversight and accountability, was presented with misleading information. Auditors at Arthur Andersen, one of the most prestigious accounting firms in the world, signed off on the financials year after year. Whether through negligence or deliberate blindness, the people who were supposed to catch the fraud either missed it or looked away. The culture inside the company had become one where honesty was a liability. Employees who raised concerns found themselves sidelined. When a financial analyst publicly questioned whether Enron's stock was overvalued in early 2001, Skilling responded by calling him a profane name during a live earnings call, a moment that shocked observers but failed to trigger serious scrutiny at the time. Then cracks began to appear. In August 2001, Skilling suddenly resigned, citing personal reasons. He had already sold tens of millions of dollars worth of his own Enron shares before walking out the door. Lay returned as CEO, telling employees and investors the company was fundamentally strong. Behind the scenes, Enron's vice president Sharon Watkins sent Lay a detailed memo warning him that the accounting practices were unsustainable and that the company faced the risk of imploding in a wave of accounting scandals. Lay received the warning. Nothing changed. Within weeks, federal regulators began investigating, Credit agencies downgraded Enron's debt rating to near junk status. The stock price, which had been $90 just a year earlier, crashed toward zero. On December 2, 2001, Enron filed for bankruptcy, at that point the largest bankruptcy filing in American history. The wreckage left behind, the human cost of Enron's collapse, was staggering. More than 20,000 employees lost their jobs almost overnight. Thousands of them had invested their retirement savings and pension funds in company stock, which was now essentially worthless. Ordinary workers who had given decades of their lives to the company watched their financial futures evaporate, while top executives had quietly cashed out long before the collapse became public. Kenneth Lay alone sold over 900,000 shares of Enron stock in the months before the bankruptcy, all while publicly insisting the company was in excellent health. The legal aftermath was sweeping. 16 people pleaded guilty to crimes connected to the fraud. Andrew Fastow struck a deal with prosecutors and spent 6 years in prison. Jeffrey Skilling was convicted on 19 counts of securities and wire fraud, ultimately serving 12 years before his release. Kenneth Lay was convicted on 10 counts of fraud and conspiracy, but died of a heart attack before he could be sentenced. His conviction was subsequently vacated as a result. Arthur Andersen, the auditing firm that had signed off on Enron's fraudulent books, was convicted of obstruction of justice and effectively ceased to exist. One of the most respected accounting firms in the world, brought down alongside the client it had failed to hold accountable. The Enron scandal led directly to the passage of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, sweeping legislation that overhauled the rules around corporate financial reporting and executive accountability. It changed how public companies in America were required to operate and disclose information. In that sense, Enron's collapse reshaped an entire regulatory landscape, not because its leaders built something great, but because they dismantled it so completely. What makes the Enron story so enduring is not just its scale, but its simplicity at the core. Beneath all the complex financial instruments and accounting tricks, the truth was straightforward. Powerful people chose to deceive. They built a culture where deception was tolerated, rewarded, and eventually normalized. The empire looked untouchable from the outside, but inside it was hollow. And hollow things, no matter how tall they stand, always fall. The most dangerous threat to any great organization is never what comes from outside. It is the slow, quiet erosion of integrity within. That is the lesson Enron wrote in the most expensive ink possible: the savings, careers, and trust of the people who believed in it most.